In this episode of the Power Up with Keith Withrow show, we welcome back our favorite psychotherapist, Dr. Torre. This week's topic of discussion is the trauma in the Black family.
In a lot of ways, we're in a far worse predicament than we were 50 years ago.
I agree.
It's almost impossible to have generational wealth with a segmented family unit.
Did you know that insurance was built to keep us from getting adequate health care? So they set up insurance in such a way that they could get their medical needs met, but it was to ensure that we wouldn't, so we would die off.
Welcome to the Power Up with Keith Withrow show. Glad to have you back. And today we've got some great content for you. We told you we're going to come back and hit you in the mouth with some good stuff. And we have with us here today a mother, a psychotherapist, a business owner, a wife, and most importantly to me, my friend, Dr. Torre. Here again, and we got some good stuff. How you doing, Dr. Torre?
I'm fabulous. It's Friday.
I know, right?
And it's good to be here.
Thank God
Always
it's Friday.
good to have conversation with you.
Yes. Today we want to talk about something that has resonated in Dr. Torre's spirit as well as mine, especially with all of the things that are coming about with our current administration and everything that's coming down the pipe extremely fast. We want to talk about the trauma in the Black family. Now, this may step on a few toes, but we just want to talk about the reality of some of the things that has happened to us over the years as a community and how it affected us in our interaction with our children, our daily living, our families, our relationships, our walk and with our faith walks. All of these things, I think, has been affected by how all of us have been traumatized in some way. So I'm not going to get into it too heavy because I have the specialist that's here that has studied this stuff and I called her when we wanted to talk about what content. When I asked her what was on her heart, because on this show, as you already know, if you've watched us before, we like to talk about real content. There's enough content that you can see that's sort of meaningless. We want to talk about the things that's going to impact someone's life, make a difference, make you say, about some things. We want to impact you. We want to hit you in the mouth. And with that being said, Dr. Torre, let's get on this thing.
Let's get it. First, let me just say thank you for having me again. And yes to everything that you're saying. Like right now, I feel like we as Black people that have the opportunity to have a voice need to say things that actually matter and going to mean something. And this is so important. I feel where we are right now in this political climate, where we are right now as Black people, I think that this is very important information to just explore and chop it up.
Yes. So where I want to start in this conversation, and these are probably conversations that a lot of you all have probably had just sitting around, and I want to start with, let's talk about the trauma. Of course, none of us was around when our ancestors were brought here from the Horn of Africa, from the Western Coast, and brought here by slave trade, and were brought to the Americas and to some of the West Indies and South America. We were spread out, as it says in the Bible, from all the far ends of the earth by ship. And So none of us were here to experience that, of course. However, let's talk about how some of that trauma has transcended through the generations to where it's still evident in our community, and the damage that it's still causing. I'm going to even go as far to say this. And I might be jumping the gun, but in a lot of ways, we're in a far worse predicament than we were 50 years ago.
I agree.
Less land ownership, less home ownership, and we're not even going to talk about the condition of the families. That trauma, let's talk about the trauma that has happened with the breakup of the family. And before you get into it, I seen a documentary the other day where it talks about it's almost impossible to have generational wealth with a segmented family unit. Studies have shown this is not even talking about white, black, or whatever. This is just a unit that's divided. It's very hard for the wealth to be created and to stay abundant enough and rigid enough to go from generation to generation. So, what do you think about the dynamic of the impact of the trauma that I think with that residue is still left on our family?
That's a broad scope, but let me just break it down just a little bit in bits. First and foremost, we are still experiencing the abuse, right? So it's like people talk about trauma and there is a beginning and an end usually. And what I like to talk about with clients and with people in general when I'm speaking on trauma, like a lot of people really don't even know, like, what is trauma? Trauma is experiencing something that is so physiologically, emotionally impactful that you no longer function the same. Okay? You have physical trauma. Athlete goes out, tears their ACL. Based on how bad the tear was, based on how effective the surgeon is, that wound may heal back and sometimes be exactly like it was. That's rare.
Right.
Usually that area, that wound, that limb now, you have to take a little more TLC and gingerly get it back to the level of performance it once was.
Yes.
Our emotions are no different.
Right.
But there was a physical injury that ended. The abuse that we suffer in this country has not ended. It's masked itself differently. It's changed, right? So we went from getting off a boat and having no rights, no freedoms, no sense of it ending for over 200 and something plus years, right? So within that generation, there was a mindset and there was a DNA being transcended from boat to 10 years to decade to decade, that we are enslaved and we are in bondage and that we cannot be free, we cannot be equal, we cannot be seen. Equality wasn't even thought of. It was all about survival, right?
That's right.
All right, so then we get past that period, we become free, but now the laws are situated where we still are really enslaved. We don't live on the plantation per se anymore, but we still cannot move about and have the options and have the same rights that these people have.
Right.
Okay, so now we eventually get to a place with Dr. King and civil rights and Lyndon B. Johnson where we get these rights, but the laws and the leveling field is never leveled.
No.
So right now, we still have zoning issues. We still have real estate issues. We still have educational disparities. We still have health disparities.
Redlining.
You said what?
Redlining.
Redlining?
Yes.
I saw some research that showed that, did you know that insurance was built to keep us from getting adequate health care? So they set up insurance in such a way that they could get their medical needs met, but it was to ensure that we wouldn't, so we would die off.
Right.
So attempt after attempt to annihilate us has not ended. Okay? So the trauma's still going.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the reasons it's so hard to get to a place of getting past it, because, okay, now we're supposedly equal, but I move in a neighborhood, I make as much money as you make, but because I'm black and I'm in your neighborhood, the stares, the looks, the isolation. I don't want your children playing with my children. Your children telling my children, you're not equal, you're not good as me. On and on and on. It doesn't end, right? You get on a plane. Shaquille O'Neal gets on a plane and a woman tells him, what you doing in first class? You don't belong here. Shaquille O'Neal. Now, I said Shaquille O'Neal not because he's a rich basketball player. I'm saying Shaquille O'Neal because his face has been plastered everywhere. Okay? Your face is on all major networks.
Yes.
This woman I know has had to have come across you at some point. And you look at this man and say, what are you doing sitting in first class?
Literally.
An NBA champion.
Literally said it.
Yes.
Well, I experienced that last week. I arrived on last Sunday. I flew first class back from Oklahoma City from an industry conference, and I was in seat 1A. On the way out, I was in seat 1C. On the way back, I was seat 1A. And the nice lady who was next to me on 1B, I don't think she wanted me to sit next to her. It was quite obvious. She looked at me up and down, and she turned her back and never said a word, which I don't care because I don't want to talk to you anyway. I mean, I don't have to talk to the person next to me. But usually you at least say hello. You know, I spoke because I came in, but I could tell that she was not happy that I was in first class next to her.
So let me paint a picture. So you didn't care because you didn't really want to speak to her. But your
Well, I
mind,
would have. I mean,
but hold on. But
Right.
your mindset had to think about something that a white person never has to think about. Your mindset getting on that plane was predicated on how is she perceiving me and receiving me. And the first thing that comes to your mind is black male, right? You've been doing that your whole life, right? That's trauma. That's a form of trauma. Because you've been taught and trained ever since you were this big. You can't do this. You can't do that. Be careful of the police. Make sure when you're out, you conduct yourself this way. All of those things were our parents' provision to say, when you go out into public, you are prey.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Anything that's preyed upon is traumatized.
Right.
Right? So, like, when I first started dating my husband, he's a big guy, 6'4", 260 pounds. He told me, he said, I very rarely look women in the face when I first encounter them because of my size, because of my color. I have experienced people being afraid, people thinking that I'm going to do something, people thinking I might be angry, so on and so forth. So we have this, we have this deep-seated modeling and teaching that has transcended generations because we want to live. Now, let's talk about from a psychological perspective what that means. So you have what's called Maslow's hierarchy. Maslow's hierarchy is shaped like a pyramid.
Right.
At the bottom of the pyramid, you have food, clothing, shelter, stability, safety, resources.
The basics.
The basics to survive.
Right.
Do you understand that if you don't have those things, you cannot psychologically process to elevate emotionally and cognitively?
Right.
So that's why when you see people, you go, why are they living under a bridge? Why couldn't the slaves free themselves? Because they were so traumatized. They were just trying to live and survive and eat. They couldn't even think about what equality would look like.
Right.
Right? They had to wait until laws and the times met up and they allowed us to be free, right?
Right.
So think about what that does to the black man. That I'm brought over here and I'm allowed to have a family. I'm allowed to procreate. I'm allowed to have a woman, but this woman at any time don't belong to me fully. This man can come in here and sleep with her.
Right.
They can separate us. I can have these children and they can say, you know what? We got to sell them because we're in trouble financially. Or we got to sell them because we're trying to do good with this other plantation. So the black family has always been looking over their back. And the black family has always known at any moment my existence can completely change based on your mood, your fear, your livelihood, your resources. How has that changed today?
I can say that probably we're in Atlanta. If you all don't know, we're filming. We're in Atlanta, and I've been in Atlanta since I was 5 years old. I was born in New Jersey, but I can honestly say Atlanta's been called the Black Mecca, and I can honestly say, however, I've traveled to most of the United States. I've been to all the major cities, and I've traveled abroad as well. Now, in saying that, I can honestly say that Atlanta is very much different than most other places.
Absolutely.
Where I can say we've been put in a bubble, kinda. Here in Atlanta, I'm gonna say, because I'm 55, so when I came along, I don't know previous to me, but I do know in the 60s and 70s even. This has been a place where a person of color who operates with due diligence and integrity, or some without integrity, but you can basically make your way here, and you can live a very nice lifestyle according to your home and automobiles and things of that nature, and lifestyle.
Right.
So in that, I can say, if I've been somewhat isolated from some of the things that people in other areas probably have been subject to.
Right.
I've heard some horror stories about Alabama, Mississippi, even Louisiana. I've heard some South Carolina, North Carolina. So, but with that still being said, I'm going to say this. It's tough. It's tough. I know for a fact. I don't know what it's like to be a woman. Don't want to know. But I can definitely tell you it's tough being a black man.
With all of that opportunity,
Yes.
you still feel like it's hard being a black man.
It is. And the reason why I said, and we talked about this a little earlier, that trauma, a lot of my trauma comes from people who look like me. Now, I've had some instances where people who don't look like me have tried to slow me down or stop progression or said things. And I even shared with the crew here earlier that even in our childhood, my father had the dreams to build his dream home. And he went with very good credit. And in the 70s, this is 1975, I think my dad had $35,000 in his checking in his savings account, which was pretty good money back then. And he had a great job, because at that time, he had started his own business at that time. No, he was working for the airlines at the time. He started his business afterwards, but he wanted to get the loan to build his house. He owned the land, but he wanted to get the loan. The bankers told him, "Hey, do you realize how big this house is?" And he says, "Yeah, I know how big it is. I have the plans right here. This is the square footage. I know how big it is." And it's like, we're not gonna finance this house for you. This house is too. This is crazy. He says, "Well, okay, you don't have to finance me. I'll build it out of my pocket." Well, he did. It took him 4 years to do it, and we had to move in it before it was completely done. But he did build this house out of his pocket with no mortgage. That was an incredible feat, and that took a set of kahunas. He had the testicular fortitude to pull it off.
Yeah.
But in doing so, there were a lot of people that were not happy
Yes.
that he was building such a home in the community. And people began to come in and tear the house down. And in one instance, when they tore it down, the house at that time had about 80 windows. I'll never forget. I have pictures of it. They broke every window of the house out. It was a struggle because he was building it out of his pocket. It's now 1978. The country was in a recession. And my dad was in the trucking industry, and the freight situation was bad. Gas was out of the roof. It was a bad time during that time.
Carter.
So he took off work to actually stay and protect. He went to law enforcement and reported it. They didn't do anything. They suggested he put up some no trespassing signs, because he basically said what he was going to do if he caught them. And he went around to all the neighbors, the ones who he knew were prejudiced and didn't want us there, and told them what happened and if they knew what he was going to do if they came back. So he commenced to actually spending the night. Every night he'd show up. My mother would drop him off around right at dark and leave with the car. He would get on a ladder, get up in the rafters with his 12 gauges, 30-06, and his 12 gauge shotgun, and would lay and wait. He did this for 2 months, every night, all night. But I guess the word got out and they never came back. And I forgot to add that they hang a noose. They put a noose. Mm-hmm. They hung a noose where my kitchen is right now. Mm-hmm. All that being said, that's kind of traumatizing, but it still doesn't.
No, that's very traumatizing.
Yeah, but even that I'm a business owner, and I have more problems with people with jealousy, envy, hatred of me, not bothering anybody, just trying to progress in life. Mm-hmm. And try to have a legitimate business, not try, but we have success in that area of having a legitimate business that just operates off merit, operates off pure, hardcore hard work and performance. Mm-hmm. But I constantly fight the battle of people who look like me trying to take me out.
And that is also from trauma as well.
Yes.
Because when you go back and you had house Negroes, field Negroes.
Yes.
Favoritism began, right? And even when you look at just the regular family dynamic, let's leave race out of it. 3 siblings.
Right.
1 sibling is the star.
Right.
1 sibling does well. The other 2 siblings have 2 choices. I can align myself and emulate the sibling that's doing really, really well.
Right.
Or I can be a rebel and go the opposite way and demand attention however I can get it, which usually is going to be opposite from the good and decent behavior that the successful sibling has committed to. So that child becomes the black sheep, right? And what happens with the black sheep, the family's like, what's wrong with you? Why are you always da-da-da-da-da-da-da? So in trying to be like this older sibling,
yes,
this personality, characteristics, everything is comprised of jealousy. Now you think on that plantation, and you think after Jim Crow, and you think after black people being allowed to go to HBCUs and universities and get educated, the ones that could not had a choice. I can emulate my brothers and sisters and go that path,
right,
or I can find every reason and every excuse why not to. And in the midst of me failing because I didn't choose and make better decisions,
right,
now I try to undermine and usurp the successful one because I couldn't be them, so I'm going to stop them. But all of that transpired from getting off that damn boat.
Well, it even goes back further than that. Jealousy and envy is real. The first documented, that's right, the first documented murder that we know of, that's documented in the Holy Bible, was Cain killing Abel because he was jealous of the sacrifices and the Lord's response to it. So it is in our nature. He deleted his brother.
Yes. It's in our nature.
So that's in our nature.
It's in our nature.
Yep.
And so when we sit back and really think about from a long perspective, a long history, we've been modeled some of the worst self-deprecating behaviors you can think of. Because we got the white man telling us, you're not even a human being.
Yeah.
That it is my right to treat you this way because you are like that ox or that doggone cow that I purchased,
your property,
and I can do whatever I want to do with you, right?
Yeah,
and then you have your own brothers and sisters looking at you saying, I got to survive, so if I got to take you out to do it, if I got to use you, if I got to abuse you, if I got to take advantage of you to get ahead, I'm going to do it because I want to eat just like you eating.
That's deep. That's some deep stuff. You know, a lot of the things that has gone on with us as a people was a strategy.
It's by design.
By design. And even like social services, how that came along, where, Your behavior is taught that you could get more handout money if the man is not in the home. And if you have more children, the more handout money you get. Right? So now, there you go. There's a man's purpose is for covering his family by prayer and by protection.
And provision.
You remove that out of the household. That's one of the oldest tactics in war. You guys know I always go back to my military stuff. I'm big on military strategy. You kill the men, now you can take the women and children captive. Okay? Take the man out of the picture. What has happened? I think even to the point now where the feminization of men.
Yes.
That is an agenda.
But that started on the plantation too.
It did. It started on the ships.
Yes, it did.
There were stories and documented evidence that the most strongest,
the
most strongest, most maybe seemed like he had more leadership traits would be broken in front of the others and sodomized in front of the others and sometimes murdered or maybe just tortured.
Yep.
So a lot of people say, hey, let it go. That was a long time ago. You know, no one here now did these atrocities to your people. You know, that was a long time ago. Well, yes, it was a long time ago. And some of the stuff still goes on. Maybe just not in your face with an actual lynching, but a lot of the shootings, a lot of, even if it's not the incarcerations, how crack was put in the community, known, unclassified documents have shown CIA, our federal government was involved with moving crack. First it was heroin into the Afro-American communities. Later came along, crack was implemented. Even now, weapons. Now I'm going to go even deeper. Now a lot of the programming that we see. Your favorite artist. Your favorite actor. The things your gates, your eye gates, your ear gates. The things that you see and you're shown. Some of the fashion that we see, some of the trends that have come about are designed for you not to be successful. For instance, when I talk to young men, everybody has a right to express themselves the way they want to. But I tell young men and young women, but especially young men, because those are the ones that I try to impact when I can. Look, don't go putting too much ink on you right now. Be mindful of what ink you put where. Okay, your favorite artist is Lil Wayne. He's an entertainer. His whole thing is to look exotic. Michael Jackson taught us that. He even knew that. Michael Jackson knew, he understood
Prince.
Marketing. He understood. He talked about the Ringling Brothers, how they use marketing, how it's show business.
Yeah.
Well, I try to tell our young guys, look, you're not an entertainer. You're not a famous rapper. So if you look like Wayne and you walk into someone's establishment, you can't, in my business, you can't look like that. You can't look like that. If you're going to be in the public, certain opportunities, let's say this, you cut off a major part of what opportunities could be available to you because of how you're now presenting yourself.
Yep.
So many people now are so caught up on what they see on social media, what they've deemed as cool or the trend. And don't get me wrong, I believe in trends. I like to do certain trendy things, but you have to do things that are appropriate for where you are. In my case, age appropriation or age appropriate. If you're still in the community, if you're still out looking and trying to find yourself in a career, don't box yourself in because you got too much ink or how you're wearing your hair. I've always said that how perception can be reality to the persons who's doing the perceiving. You may not be a thug. You may be a great person, right? You may be a loving, caring person, right? But if you present yourself a certain way, if you got teardrops on your face, that's tattooed teardrops.
You heard Dave Chappelle say, you may not be a hoe, but if you got a hoe's uniform on, people are going to think you're a hoe, right?
This is heating up. Click the link below to watch part 2 of this discussion. And remember to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Thanks for watching.
The Power Up with Keith Withrow show is sponsored by Motor Coach Consulting International. Excellence in ground transportation.